Hello. Before we begin, please make sure you take out page 13 and 14 in your packet, and let's just review what we did during our last lesson. Our goal again today is I can calculate a unit rate given two quantities, including fractions, in a word problem. The other day we focused on whole numbers, and today we're going to focus on fractions. So a unit rate, or wording rather, we want to review. Sometimes they're going to mention the word per, whatever unit, per hour, per second, per month. Sometimes they're going to use the word each, which implies one. Both of them imply one. A cake means one cake, and sometimes they just flat out say find the unit rate, which the minute we hear unit rate, we're trying to find how many for one of a certain unit. So would you please turn to page 14. We're going to focus on problem number 3 and 4 because they involve fractions. So Isaac used 3/4 of a package of pecans to make 2 turtle cheesecakes. How many packages of pecans does he need to make a cake? And in this case, it's a turtle cheesecake. So let's highlight the information that kind of stands out. They mention 3/4 of a package of pecans, and that's compared to 2 turtle cheesecakes. Right there's our first ratio. They go on to ask, and here's the important question, how many packages of pecans? That's our unknown. Does it need to make a cake? So we're going to notice the word a, so we're referring to one cake. So let's start by setting up our first proportion, our first ratio rather. We're going to use method 1 and we'll go through method 2. I'm going to write 3/4 of a package and I'm going to label this as the pecans. Then that is for 2 cheesecakes. I'm just going to write that as cakes. So I have that label. Now I have information I don't know, so I'm going to let X represent the number of packages of pecans. So that has to do with the pecans. So when I go to set up my other ratio, because a proportion is 2 equal ratios, I'm going to use X on top because that's referring to the packages of pecans. And my other number, a cake, implies one cake because we're trying to find the unit rate. So now we're going to go to our skills. We're going to use the butterfly method. I get 2x, drop down the equal, and 3/4 times 1 would be 3/4. So we're now to the solving step. We are going to divide by 2 on each side, and pause now and use your calculator, please. The answer is x equals 3/8. And if we look back at what we found, 3/8, well, X represented the number of a package of pecans. So 3/8 of a package of pecans is what's needed to make one cake. And that makes reasonable sense because if I'm making 2 cakes, it takes 3/4 of a package, and 3/4 is larger than 3/8. Before we move on, I just want to acknowledge too, because we might not have talked about this for a while. When you enter this in your calculator, you're going to enter 3 ABC key 4. That enters a fraction, and then divided by 2 in your calculator, just in case you're confused about that. Next, in our last lesson, we discussed that there's a quicker way to do this, what I referred to as a shortcut. And you're going to notice that I started out with this initial ratio, 3/4 as a ratio compared to 2 cakes. And when I get to my solving step, well, I have exactly that same thing. So we can use this shortcut method just by starting with the ratio that they gave us. But I'm really going to encourage you to label, please. Please label, even though we're using the shortcut, because it's going to help us. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take 3/4 divided by 2. So So that's all we have to do. We're just going to use that ratio. We're not going to set up a proportion, but we're going to use this right there as division, divided by 2, just like we did when we solved. And we're going to get back 3/8. Now, the reason I'm asking you to label is because I really want you to know that we just found this 3/8 refers to the package of pecans for 1 cake. So when we write this out using either method, we want to acknowledge it takes 3/8 of a package of pecans to make 1 cheesecake. So that's what we're asked to find. We're asked how many packages of pecans are needed to make a cake, and now we've answered that question. Let's move on now to example number 4. Ethan writes 1/6 of a page in 1/12 of a minute. How much time does it take him to write each page? So let's highlight the information that we need so far. So it said he writes 1/6 of a page in 1/12 of a minute. So right there we have our initial ratio. Then it goes on to ask us how much time. Well, time is in, if I look at my unit of time, it's in minutes. So we're looking for minutes. How many minutes? And then it says for him to write each page. So when I hear each, I'm talking about 1. So we're going to start by setting this up initially. We're going to do it both methods. We're going to use the proportion way. I'm going to write 1/6 of a page compared to 1/12 of a minute. And that information came from what they gave us, our initial ratio. Now, we also want to make sure that our variable, again, you can use any variable. M would be good for minutes, but I'm going to use X. Let X represent how many minutes, or the number of minutes. So now I have X. Oh, should I put the X on top? Normally I've been putting the X on top. Why am I pausing, do you think? Well, it's the number of minutes. So X should not go on top. X should go on bottom because it's minutes. This labeling can save us from many mistakes. So X is on bottom this time, and each page, that's implying 1. Oh, top is talking about the pages. So now I have this set up correctly. Pages are all on top, minutes are on bottom, and I have to be very careful of the wording. Okay, so now we have this set up. We're going to do our usual. We're going to take cross multiply 1/6 X. I'm going to drop down the equal, and 1/12 times 1 would be 1/12. Now we have to solve this. Whatever number is next to X, that's what we divide by. We're going to divide by 1/6 on both sides. Now in our last problem, it turned out that whatever we had here was the same thing as what we have here, and it's not. We're going to discuss that in a minute. So would you pause and use your calculator? You're going to put 1 ABC 12 divided by 1 ABC 6. So pause and do that, please. And it turns out X equals 1/2. So X equals 1/2. And what 1/2 what? Well, let's look back at our variable, 1/2 of a minute. So let's see if this makes logical sense. So let's start out. So apparently it's going to take a half a minute to read one page. So if I look at what they gave me, they mentioned that at 1/6 of a page, I'm trying to go to a whole page. So I would have to take this times 6 to get one whole page. If I took 1/12 times 6, oh, I would get 6/12, which is the same thing as 1/2. So that now makes sense if I look at it logically. So that's the way that we have to do this. Now, the shortcut way, I can see making an easy mistake if I set it up the way that it was given. If I took 1/6 divided by 1/12, I would not get the same answer. And the key is in how they ask the question. They ask how much time does it take for each page. The minute they said that, this is the unit that I'm looking for. So 1 unit, and that would reverse. That would mean that if I were going to do this particular problem the shortcut way, I'd have to start with the minutes being divided, being divided by the page, because that's the order they gave the question. They ask how much time, that comes first, for each page. So if I'm going to do the shortcut way, I have to really pay attention to the way they ask the question. Hope this was helpful, and would you please go on now to the practice set on the back of page 15.